Major changes could be coming to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP, if Republican lawmakers have their way. Oklahoma Congressman Josh Brecheen and Utah Senator Mike Lee are leading the charge with their SNAP Reform and Upward Mobility Act, reintroducing legislation that would impose stricter work requirements for recipients aged 18 to 64, including parents with children over 6. Supporters say these reforms would curb fraud and reduce government dependency. But critics, on the other hand, warn they could leave vulnerable families without assistance. SNAP enrollment has skyrocketed, with over 42 million Americans receiving benefits in 2023, costing the taxpayers more than $110 billion. Now, GOP lawmakers are pushing to tighten these eligibility rules and cut spending with provisions that could be folded into the upcoming budget reconciliation process. Joining us now to discuss this proposal, some say would be very controversial, is Congressman Josh Brecheen. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. I know that the state of Oklahoma has a lot to say about the SNAP program. You have your Indian reservations. You have a lot of people who rely on SNAP. Talk to us about the proposed changes and the reforms that you are introducing here.
Yeah, well, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your guest programming today. First of all, it's an honor to be with you. In terms of what we're trying to accomplish, the goal for Americans it should always be, relative to these programs, how do we make sure that we are reducing the poverty level? And if you go back 30 years, what you'll find is there have been two significant time periods over the last 30 years where the poverty level has started to decrease from the historic norms of 14% and started dipping towards 10%. You'll find that during the Contract with America timing of where Bill Clinton signed a lot of work requirements. Particular SNAP was involved with that. You see the poverty rate start really reducing. And then you'll also see in the Trump administration that there was a poverty rate reduction that, from the 14% towards the 10% rate. So what do those two elements of history tell us? Is that work is good. Work ethic builds progress. It builds prosperity in your nation. The real goal is to help people get out of poverty, not create more opportunities for poverty. And so that's what this does. It's been tried in the past. Again, a Democrat president, Bill Clinton, worked with Newt Gingrich. Contract with America, Republicans led on this. It led to a reduction in the poverty rate.
Well, talk about also the big and hot topic of fraud, waste, and abuse. Lots of criticism that the current SNAP program has been prone to abuse in the system, which is no surprise. It's a big system, a lot of money flowing, and probably not a lot of consistent oversight. Right. What do you mean talk to us about what is meant when you're talking about fraud and abuse inside the SNAP program, and then how does this piece of legislation aim to reduce that?
So you go back again to the Contract with America, where Democrats and Republicans said work requirements should be a bigger part of these programs. And so what they did was they implemented these work requirements. However, states have learned over the past 3 decades how to game those. And so there are different waivers that states were allowed to start opting into. And so there's gamesmanship that is applied by the states to where they'll apply high unemployment in an area, a region, and yet it may not be fully pervasive in that area, but they'll regionalize certain areas and they can really get their state out of a high number of work requirements. And you've got state after state that are pulling this into the way that they manage the program. So we're doing that. We're going to close some of those loopholes, make sure that the work requirements and the effect of the 90s where people were getting out of poverty, we have a chance for that again. And at the same time, we're going to start giving people, the states, more ability to have more input. Right now, it's 100% federal. States oftentimes want to be able to have some means of affecting these programs in terms of, Healthy SNAP. I'm an author, again, with Senator Lee on Healthy SNAP, which is requiring nutritious foods be a part of the food stamp program, not the junk food that consumes 20% of the total spend. We want to reform that. You've got some states right now asking for waivers to have control under state law to be able to do that, but it's very difficult when the Fed is picking up 100% of the tab on this. And so part of this measure,
you raise
go ahead.
You raise a very interesting I think, detail that is missed often when we're talking about waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. And you just said that the fraud was somewhat carried out by states themselves, like gaming the system.
They have
And
no
I
skin in the
don't. We're
game,
not
Bill.
quite talking about that. We're talking about people. We're talking about when we're talking about waste, fraud, and abuse, we think people are gaming the system. In this case, you're having entire states gaming the system and enabling more people on a mass scale to take advantage of that gaming.
So think about this. If you don't have any skin in the game, if somebody gives you money and says, go buy something, right? You're not concerned about the cost. You'll go buy the nicest thing you can. But when you're paying for something, you're going to be very selective. You want quality, and you're going to be cost conscientious. And so what we have to do is, when it comes to the Fed-state relationship, we want to empower the states to be cost conscientious. And when 100% of SNAP food stamps is built on the back of the federal taxpayer, the federal government, what incentive is there on a lower level among the states for state authority auditing, checking eligibility requirements? You've got so many people that we know, whether it be Medicaid or SNAP, that there's been years where you would go 5 to 10 years of certain people being on programming. And in terms of, do they qualify? Is their income eligibility really checked? We know there's so many people that are on the program that they're not really checking their income level. But in addition to that, how many people are taking cash under the table in terms of, they know that they'll trip the income threshold, and so they'll tell somebody, don't pay me or I have to report it, pay me cash, and I won't report that so I can remain on certain programs. You have people we hear about that don't take raises. Like, their employer will want to increase their skill level, their responsibility, want to give them a pay raise, and they'll do the calculation and go, oh, I'm no longer going to be qualified for certain government programs. And they'll miss the opportunity long-term for their own personal advancement because of government incentives.
You know, your bill also seeks to reduce spending on SNAP, which has risen from under $20 billion. You're talking about the 90s. We're talking about the Clinton, Gingrich era. Back then, we were spending about $20 billion on SNAP total. But go fast forward to right now, and we're spending over $110 billion today. Obviously, inflation's calculated into all of that as well, but we went from 20 billion to 110 billion. I don't think our population and our poverty population grew that largely. I could be wrong. What assurances can you give that these cuts are not going to disproportionately impact extremely vulnerable populations?
We have a problem in this country to where our population growth is growing in terms of percentages, and yet we're doubling the enrollment of certain programs like this. We have doubled the enrollment in 20 years on the SNAP program. We have doubled the enrollment. Our population, I can go back to 2012. Since 2012, I can tell you we've only grown 6% in terms of the U.S. population. We're now 333 million Americans. Yet, go a little further back, go back to the early 2000s, yet we've doubled the number of people that are on SNAP. So those numbers don't align. There's no way you double it and you're only growing since 2012, 6%. Let me give you another element relative to Medicaid, which is also specific to indigent. Those are lower income thresholds. Since 2012, our Medicaid population has grown 60%. Our U.S. population's only grown 6%. We have an epidemic in this country where, under the guise of mercy, what we're doing is we're enrolling people. We're not checking who's eligible. Medicaid now has more people that are above the poverty line on that program than below the poverty line. It's the first time, if you check the numbers the last couple of years, Paragon puts out a chart on this. We have more people now on Medicaid above the poverty line than below the poverty line. You can find this fact from the FGA that says that on Medicaid, again, there's so much rollover or commonality between SNAP and Medicaid that the largest subgroup now on Medicaid is the able-bodied population, not the blind, not the elderly, not the pregnant or nursing mothers, not the disabled, the historic population. Now it's the able-bodied person that is on those rolls now. That's the largest subgroup on Medicaid. So again, we have, under the guise of mercy, we are increasing poverty. That's not what mercy is about.
Wow, those are stunning, stunning numbers, and very sobering, especially considering that we're one of the most prosperous nations in the world. Not numbers that are matching up with I guess the real prosperity that is out there. Let's talk about Colombia and Kristi Noem. She recently flew down to Colombia. She was looking at immigration, crime, deportation issues to discuss with Colombia amid rising tensions between the Trump administration and the Colombian government. The government there has pushed back against a lot of Trump's deportation policies. They've emphasized human rights concerns. You sit on the Homeland Security Committee, Congressman. Given these tensions between the United States and Colombia, how do you think the U.S. should balance border security while maintaining diplomatic ties with this nation? Because we know full well that any gaps we have in South America, China is going to swoop in and take advantage of, if they haven't already.
I'm so grateful to a president who is making the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard when it comes to immigration. And I don't know if you saw the True Social post that President Trump put out. We, as members of Congress, are alerted when the president puts something out. And he was thanking, I think it was, I don't think it was Colombia, but I'm forgetting the country in this moment, thanking them for having such a nice place to send these Tren de Aragua violent extremists that have come into this country, and we have deported them. And it's a video of President Trump showing them going into prisons and how they were removed from this country.
That was El Salvador and Bukele.
El Salvador, that's correct. I'm so grateful to a president and the community at large, moms and dads having conversations with daughters. I live in Oklahoma. I've had one with myself with a 19-year-old daughter who wanted to, run off for a weekend and go with a friend somewhere because of the concern over these gangs that are coming across the southern border.
Well, I was just talking to your colleague out of Maryland, Congressman Andy Harris, about that headline that the media is absolutely going bonkers over. This poor Maryland father, ripped from his home and sent down to this El Salvadorian jail. And the reality is they're ignoring small details like, well, this was a guy with associations to MS-13. One judge outright said he was an MS-13 member. So, big lie media, as I call them, are going to have a tough time increasingly as more of these stories come to light and people are a little more savvy about the context that is often missing in these highly propagandized headlines.
Yeah. People want a country where they feel safe, and President Trump is restoring confidence in the safety among our communities.
Congressman, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless you. Honored.
Coming up, we have comedian Bobby Sauce taking a spin on headline roulette. He's got some good ones. Stick around.